MA2 is a really advanced lighting control software, but there are still some features that you kind of have to get a little creative with because they don't exactly exist natively in the console. One of the more useful features that I love on other consoles that doesn't exist in the MA is the ability to have a Lowlight preset in addition to the highlight preset that does exist in the console. You might be familiar with editing a fixture profile to change a highlight value. Usually you just go into patch and fixture schedule, fixture types, and then when you go in to edit, let's say we'll edit our Mac Viper profile here, we can change the highlight values in this highlight column for any of our attributes we have listed on the left. And these highlight values are just temporary values that are put into the programmer's output to assist in programming and make things a little bit easier for you. However, in this video, I'm going to show you how to create a Lowlight preset in addition to the highlight preset. It's a little bit of a workaround using a macro, but I think it's a really cool tool that you can use in your programming. And if you want to skip the whole tutorial part, the macro is up on the screen right now, and you can go ahead and download the XML file from the link in the description below. But for those of you who want to see the process, we're going to jump over to our command screen and recreate it. I'm going to create a new macro by right-clicking on an empty macro pool item. I'm going to use macro 2 here, and that will open up the edit macro window over on screen 2. I'm going to start by storing whatever we currently have selected in the programmer to a placeholder group. So we're going to do store group 666. I'm just using 666 as a placeholder because it's easy to remember. It's far out of the way of any other group number I would legitimately use for normal things. But you can use 420 if you like as well. The next section of this macro has to be done in the blind editor. So we're going to start by going into blind edit on. If we had anything dumped into the blind editor before, I want to clear that out before we do any sort of trickery. So we'll do clear all. And then we will select that group that we just stored in the first line of this macro by saying group 666. For the next part, we're going to hop back over into our command screen, and I'm going to create a Lowlight and a highlight preset before we get any further. So we're going to grab our fixtures and we'll just say when we highlight, we want everything to be yellow. And we'll store this and we will label it as our highlight. And now what we'll also do is we will assign this preset as a highlight preset by hitting assign, clicking on the preset, and hitting highlight. And you also, it's kind of annoying, you have to call the preset after you've assigned it and then clear it out. And then that will do some trickery in the background of the fixture profile to substitute the highlight values for whatever you store into the highlight preset. And then I want to create my Lowlight preset. So I'm going to select the fixtures that I want to have this same Lowlight value, and I will change the color to indigo or blue, and we'll make that our Lowlight. And now we have our two presets that we're going to be referencing in the macro. We also need to store these Lowlight preset values into a sequence, then assign that sequence to an executor. I'm going to call this Lowlight preset by double left clicking on it, and you can see in the encoder bar up here we have the preset being referenced. It says Lowlight right in there. So I'm going to store that to a sequence, also name that Lowlight. Then I'm going to assign that sequence to an executor. So we'll hit assign, click on the Lowlight sequence, and then click on an executor destination. The shortcut to change this function of the button to toggle is to use assign and then temp, and then click on the executor. Now we have a toggle. So let's just verify that our toggle button works at least by clicking on the Lowlight toggle button, and we'll switch over and we see that yes, the two fixtures that we put into that preset are toggling when I toggle this Lowlight on and off. So now that we kind of have our prerequisites out of the way for making this whole thing work, let's jump back into editing the macro and we'll finish it out. So if we think through this macro, we're already in the blind editor. We've recalled the group that we stored. Now we just need to put those fixtures that were stored into that group at the values of our Lowlight preset and then store that to the sequence. So the next line in this macro is pretty straightforward. We're going to say at preset 0 dot and then in quotation marks to use the name of a pool item, we'll do Lowlight and make sure to close it out. Now we're going to store what we just called into the blind editor to our sequence by doing store sequence Lowlight. And if we were just to run this command line without anything else in here, it's going to pop up with a window that asks us for options. But to bypass that and just do it automatically, we want to overwrite whatever is in that sequence by saying /O for overwrite at the end. Now we're going to clear out our blind editor by saying clear all, and we will hop out of the blind editor by saying blind edit off. Now we're back in the regular programmer. We're going to call the group again, say group 666. And now that the first part of this macro has updated our Lowlight executor with all those values that we stored, we're going to turn on that executor. We're going to type in on executor, and then you use this asterisk as a wildcard whenever you're referencing a number for like a page or a pool item. You use that as a wildcard to stand for any number. So if I type it like this, asterisk dot, and then in parentheses, Lowlight. So this line of the macro will turn on any executor on any page that has the name Lowlight. And the last part of this macro is using the built-in highlight feature of the desk by saying highlight on. And then at this point in the macro, we want to prevent the next line from automatically running. Everything else up to this point has been using a follow wait time. But now that we have highlight on, this is where we kind of want to pause, let the programmer do the work, whatever it is, doing positions or whatever. And then we can proceed with the second half of this macro, which is turning highlight off, which is a lot easier than doing all this storing stuff. So our next line is going to be highlight off, but we're going to change our wait time on highlight on to a go. So this entire macro is going to run up until this point, and then it's going to wait to run the highlight off command until you hit go again on the macro. And then our final follow command is going to be turning off that Lowlight executor. So we're going to say off executor asterisk dot Lowlight. And that's pretty much it. Now we will run over and test and see how this works. Oh, and I made one mistake in the macro when I just tried to run it. If we just do store group 666, if there's something already there, it'll ask you if you want to overwrite. There will already be something there if you've been using this macro previously. So you just need to type in /O on the first line. Now we can go ahead and test the macro by selecting some lights, and we will turn on the highlight macro. And you can see our lights that we selected turn to yellow, which was our highlight. And if we next through them, you'll see that they are switching back and forth between the low light and the highlight values. And the real advantage of this is once you click on the macro again, the highlight turns off and the fixtures will return to their playback color. And that's really all there is to this macro. Again, super useful for doing positions or anything that you want to see a lot of high contrast between different selections as you're highlighting through stuff. And like I said, the XML for this macro is down in the description below. You can import it into your show file, and so long as you have all these preset names the same and all the sequences and all of the executors named the same, it'll work. Anyways, thanks for watching. Cheers, guys. I will see you in the next video.